I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, we're in for another summer of love, and it will be entirely the fault of cowardly politicians. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. Plus, your tax dollars hard at work footing the bill for a state ad campaign that's only goal seems to be normalizing fentanyl abuse. Plus, some more stories on the alphabet mob, including another Pride event that banned police. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. You have 4 more days to take advantage of our 30% off promo. So if you've been watching the show, if you like the show, if you want to support the show, now's the time to sign up as a paid subscriber. Go to patreon.com/undivided. That's patreon.com/undivided. Use the promo code 300. That's the number 300, and you'll get 30% off your first year. Hello, and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I feel like our show is made for moments like this. I really do believe. And I'm not trying to incite people to violence. Obviously, I stand for the exact opposite of that, as we'll discuss and have many times on the show. But I think we're in a fight for the soul of America, a fight for the future of the country. And to me, it's not a Republican versus a Democrat issue. It's not red versus blue. I say this all the time. It's about reasonable versus unreasonable. And what we're seeing and saw for the last 2 days in California is absolutely unreasonable. Yet it continues, I guess, to shock and awe that you have so many people, and really almost the entirety of one political party in this country, that looks at that and thinks, that's reasonable. Or they might not look at it and say that's reasonable, but they'll look at it and say, it's not our fault. It's a wild thing. And immediately when the riots started to break out, we'll get to the details of it, in California over the weekend, you saw a lot of people on social media and in the national news questioning whether it's going to be a summer of love 2.0. And there's a reason why that phrase has become so widespread. It's not just because there's a clear comparison between this type of rioting and looting and destructive violent behavior and the rioting and looting and destructive violent behavior that we saw in Seattle in the summer of 2020. But summer of love has become synonymous with political cowardice and with political gaslighting. It's an indictment of this nation's left and really on left coast leaders. Of course, summer of love was the infamous phrase uttered by former Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan when she was on CNN as rioters were taking over 6 square blocks of the city. And she joked, well, maybe it'll be a summer of love. And at the time, there'd already been quite a bit of destruction, of violence, of vandalism, police cars lit on fire. And so it was just this moment where everyone could see Seattle leadership for what it was. And you could see what was happening with your own eyes. And then you heard the person who was supposed to be in charge of getting it under control act so cavalier about it. And people realize the only possible explanation for that is politics. And so that's when you see the summer of love. It's not just about violence. It is about people recognizing a lack of leadership and recognizing in advance that you were going to see a vacuum of leadership and a leadership failure, in this case, from the governor of California. So I want to talk a little bit. I have to set the stage for this because when we talk about reasonable versus unreasonable, these are the sorts of things that I mean. You know, this started in LA over the weekend over ICE raids. And look, I get it that LA is in a sanctuary state and LA is a sanctuary jurisdiction, and I support people's right to peacefully assemble. If you have individuals who want to go out and they want to protest ICE tracking down illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, and removing them from the country, I just don't have an issue with that. In fact, whenever I see a protest, it makes me kind of proud to be an American. I had an event in Kittitas County over the weekend, and there were protesters outside of it. Like 20 or so of them, mostly, geriatric white people who are incredibly misguided about what's happening in this country. But I stopped and talked to them, and, some of them were protesting me. And I'm fine with that. They were perfectly nice, by the way. No violence or vandalism. I wasn't assaulted going into this event in Ellensburg, Washington. I don't have an issue with that. I love protest. I think it's a beautiful part of this country that you can do this. So if this had been people out there just protesting ICE, and then, the political barbs back and forth and flame tensions, and then we devolved into a riot, we might be having a different conversation today. But this wasn't peaceful from the onset. These were individuals who were actively interfering with federal law enforcement efforts, blocking vehicles, trying to block the movement of ICE agents, vandalizing buildings, graffitiing buildings with F ICE, kill police, kill ICE. It wasn't peaceful from the beginning. And the intent going into it was never to be peaceful. Was never to be peaceful. And when you look at this and you now realize what it's become in LA, which is a full-blown riot that's completely out of control, it started with ICE doing targeted enforcements of people like this. People who have been convicted in this country, and specifically in the state of California, so illegal aliens. I'm just going to read you a list of some of the crimes that the illegal aliens ICE was out there rounding up committed. Sexual penetration with a foreign object, assault with the intent to commit rape, and burglary, all in California, sexual battery, assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to distribute cocaine, domestic violence, willful child cruelty, DUI, assault with a firearm. These are the kinds of criminals that ICE was actively out there trying to arrest and round up when they were met by a hostile mob. And I want you to keep that in mind when you hear people like Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal in Washington, D.C. this morning saying this.
We are here to say free the immigrants that have been arrested.
The immigrants that have been arrested.
We are here to say end the ICE raids.
End the ICE raids.
Okay, free the immigrants who have been arrested, like all the ones I just mentioned. Sexual penetration with a foreign object, willful child cruelty, assault with a deadly weapon, sexual battery. Are those the immigrants that you want freed because you're not specifying? Are those the ICE raids that you want ended because you're not specifying? So I have to believe that you mean yes. How about this one? How about a guy that committed a mass shooting and was rounded up as part of the ICE raids in LA yesterday? A Vietnamese illegal alien who's a convicted murderer and gang member. He was involved in shooting up a high school graduation party in San Marino, California in 1994. Killed 2 teenagers, injured 7 others. He was part of a gang. They showed up at the party. They were asked to leave. They came back with AK-47s, shotguns, handguns, opened fire on a high school graduation party. Should have been deported from this country a long time ago. Congresswoman Jayapal, is that the kind of person who you want released from ICE custody? Are those the sorts of ICE raids that you want to end immediately? And look, I'll use nuance. If you want to use nuance, I'll use nuance too. There's a big difference between this and a workplace raid. I acknowledge that. And I think we've done a pretty good job of using nuance on this show when it comes to the types of immigration efforts that ICE is carrying out. And I think there's room for reasonable disagreement about some of the actions taking place at workplaces, for instance. I mean, I don't think that you should be able to have dozens of people on your payroll who are in the country illegally because you want to pay them less wages in West Coast states where Democrats increase the minimum wage. And then they also want to celebrate illegal labor that some of these businesses are getting on the cheap by hiring people with false documents. Yeah, and I mean, any of us who falsify documents to be able to work in a foreign country would absolutely be arrested for it. But in this case, it's fine. But we can have reasonable disagreements. But Congresswoman Jayapal isn't using nuance. She's not out there in D.C. saying, hey, we appreciate ICE getting the murderers and the rapists and the domestic abusers off the streets. We want them to continue that work. What we don't like are the workplace raids. She's not saying that. She's not using any nuance. It's like a fatal flaw of political discourse in this country. And she wants to act like everyone being rounded up is just peaceful, hardworking, just trying to get money and raise a family. It's absolutely insane. So, of course, we know that what began as these protests against ICE enforcements, trying to get violent illegals off the street, devolved very quickly into the typical scenes that we see. Fire, cars lit on fire, police officers being assaulted, widespread looting, violence, vandalism, clashes between these rioters and the police. And we act as if this is some sort of surprise. No, this is the West Coast. This is what happens whenever the left wing doesn't like something. And it's happened under Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. As we'll talk about in a moment, all this blaming Donald Trump. Oh, if not for Donald Trump, this wouldn't be happening. Okay, who do you blame when they rioted over Gaza? Who do you blame when they rioted during the Occupy movement? Who do you blame when they rioted over George Floyd and police brutality? They love using Donald Trump as a scapegoat, but this has become a reality of West Coast political discourse. They'll hurt people and they'll break things when they don't get what they want. Donald Trump has nothing to do with it. So getting into the political cowardice aspect of this. This is kind of a 2-day ordeal. We're going into day 3 of this in LA. The first day, the Los Angeles Police Department, I had to double check because this seemed like it was fake to me. It was so ridiculous that I was like, some conservative on X made this up and pushed this out there. But no, the Los Angeles Police Department put out on the 7th, so this would have been Saturday evening, LA Police Department statement regarding today's peaceful protests. Today, demonstrations across the city of Los Angeles remained peaceful, and we commend all those who exercise their First Amendment rights responsibly. The Los Angeles Police Department appreciates the cooperation of organizers, participants, and community partners who helped ensure public safety throughout the day. While today's events concluded without incident, the Los Angeles Police Department remains fully prepared to respond swiftly and appropriately to any potential acts of civil unrest. And of course, by this time, there were already reporters on the ground showing widespread destruction, showing clashes with ICE and immigration agents. It wasn't peaceful by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't peaceful from the very beginning. Now, did you have pockets of people who wanted to actually go out and peacefully hold signs and protest what ICE was doing? Sure. But by the time the LA Police Department put this out, it was very clear that this wasn't peaceful. But I mean, it snaps you right back to the summer of 2020. It snaps you right back to what was happening in this city where we are in 2020. I mean, I'm down there with my crews watching police cars lit on fire, watching businesses be looted to the studs. This time, 5 years ago, we were in the lead up to CHOP, which was night after night after night of violent clashes of protesters throwing rocks and frozen water bottles at police. And then what did our city's quote unquote leadership do? I mean, they went out there and joined them. They acted like it was entirely peaceful, the mostly peaceful lie that was sold throughout 2020 and into 2021. So we're seeing, I mean, the exact same thing play out in LA. This is no surprise. This is always what happens. And the LA Police Department refuses to stand up for itself and refuses to actually stand up for public safety. And they're kowtowing to LA leadership. Because at the end of the day, the police chiefs work for the mayors. So they want to keep their job. So apparently keeping their job is more important than their honor or protecting their city and their citizens and their law enforcement officers. So people are like, oh my God, LA Police Department. And I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. Because the Seattle Police Department also in 2020 at the onset was downplaying the violence. It's insane. It's like, who do you work for? And then Gavin Newsom. I'm starting to think Gavin Newsom's even worse than Bob Ferguson. What a coward he is. He's coming out again. This is the evening of June 7th on Saturday. There had already been widespread violence and property destruction. The federal government is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in Los Angeles. Not because there's a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle. Don't give them one. Never use violence. Speak out peacefully. It was already a spectacle. There was already a spectacle, and there was already, by the way, a clear shortage when he says, not because there's a shortage of law enforcement. There were reporters on the ground watching this unrest, watching cars lit on fire, saying that there wasn't an LAPD officer in sight. Also remind you of something? Yeah, it reminds me of CHOP, where there wasn't a police officer in sight for blocks and blocks and blocks. Nobody had control over that situation, and Gavin Newsom wants to act like we don't need the National Guard. Things are perfectly fine. Things are perfectly under control. Just telling us, like, don't believe what you're seeing with your own eyes. The gaslighting, very similar to 2020. The gaslighting extreme. And I'm shocked how many people believe it. I posted something on my Facebook page. Oh my God, the comments were unhinged about Gavin Newsom is full of it, and what's happening in California is violent and rioting and all this. And I don't know if they're just watching MSNBC or reporters calling it mostly peaceful or whatever it was. And they're saying, oh, no, I read a statement from LAPD that everything was under control. It's like, OK, that's great. How about you just watch this video? There was a tweet, I don't have it, of Gavin Newsom, but he was somebody on X had shared videos of cop cars burning in LA. And Gavin Newsom, I kid you not, retweeted it and said, this video is from 2020, which he was right. But at the very same time, there were cars burning in LA yesterday. And also, that's not the dunk you think it is, saying, no, that's the last time I let our city burn. This is a different time. That was 2020 when I let our state's largest city burn. Absolutely insane. And while he was downplaying this and saying, hey, we don't need the National Guard, etc., rioters were assaulting federal law enforcement agents. You've probably seen the video of this rioter who was hurling these big chunks of concrete and these rocks at the windshields of ICE agents as they were trying to leave one of their raids. And at least one ICE agent was injured. Could have been killed. And so you have at that moment Donald Trump saying, hey, we're going to call in the National Guard and we're even going to put the Marines on standby at Camp Pendleton. Well, that's because the president of the United States is seeing his federal agents being assaulted in Los Angeles without repercussion, without intervention. And he's seeing the governor of California act as if everything is okay. And Democrats are losing their minds over this insinuation that from Donald Trump that he was going to call in the troops. Oh, what about states' rights, Brandi? I thought conservatives supported states' rights is a comment I was seeing often on social media yesterday. Yeah, states have a right to let their cities burn if they choose. And we know in Washington state and Oregon and California, they exercise that right often. They have the right to let these left-wing terrorists destroy their cities if they want. What they don't have a right to do is to stand idly by and block federal law enforcement and block the federal government from protecting its agents and its buildings. So let's not forget that a lot of the destruction and a lot of the violence, if not the bulk of it, was targeted at federal buildings, at the federal government, at federal agents. The White House and the federal government has every right in the world to defend its federal agents, to defend its federal property. Because clearly LAPD wasn't up to the task. And I don't know if they didn't want to, didn't feel like they needed to. They don't support ICE. So let's just let ICE, I don't know what, die, be killed by rioters? And you expect Donald Trump to sit back and do nothing? And we can have debates, as Gavin Newsom wants to have debates about what's the proper protocol for a president to call in the National Guard and put troops on the ground. And he wants to go through all the legalities of it, XYZ. Literally in the moment, while you have people in your state assaulting federal agents, completely unfettered. Absolutely insane. There was this moment as well when, in case you needed proof that Gavin Newsom is just a liar. I was watching Cam Higbee, who's an independent journalist who was on the ground there. He's based in Seattle. He covers a lot of the riots here, but he was down in LA. So these two tweets went out within a minute of each other. Okay, just to give you an idea of that whole, don't believe your own eyes. Gavin Newsom says, despite protests already being managed by LAPD, President Trump is escalating the situation by threatening to deploy roughly 500 active duty Marines to the streets of Los Angeles. Los Angeles, remain peaceful. Don't fall into the trap that extremists are hoping for. 6:03 p.m. yesterday. Meanwhile, 6:04 p.m., Cam Higbee is tweeting out video of cars burning in the streets, of rioters and looters and assaults on police officers. So both of those things can't be true, right? Both of those tweets can't be true. So do you trust the Gavin Newsom tweet where he says protests are already being managed by LAPD and he says remain peaceful, which would suggest that they are peaceful and you want them to remain that way? So is it Gavin Newsom's tweet that's true, or is it Cam Higbee's tweet with video in the moment on the ground showing that things were not peaceful, that LAPD did not have it under control? Any common sense person would say, well, I'm going to believe the video and I'm not going to believe you, Gavin Newsom. Absolutely insane. Meanwhile, another clip from Congresswoman Jayapal this morning in the way that she, again, like the Democrats, fell right in line. Let's blame Donald Trump for what we allowed to occur.
And all of the violence and the escalation is core to the Trump administration's authoritarian playbook. As we see people exercising their constitutional rights to peacefully use their voices to speak out against this injustice, they are being met with tear gas and rubber bullets from this unconstitutional, unlawful administration.
Peacefully use their voices. Nicole, can you bring up some more video? Do we have video of people peacefully using their voices? Do we have any of that? No, we have video of LAPD cruisers being pelted with rocks and bricks. Widespread violence, destruction, vandalism, fires, unrest, lawlessness. If you got a crowd of 100 and there's 5 people peacefully using their voices and the rest of them are lighting cars on fire, I don't think you can call that a peaceful protest. But she knows that. She knows that. And then again, you've got Gavin Newsom. This isn't one time where he's denying violence. This isn't 2 times. It's 3, 4, 5. It's over a period of several days while we're watching this unfold. Now he's in the war room with his police saying, joined LAPD and the LA Sheriff's Office and the state emergency officials as we respond to protests provoked by chaos from Washington. We're here to keep the peace, not play into Trump's political games. Keep the peace, again, would suggest that you have the peace. And at no point over the weekend did you have the peace. And when he says they are provoked by chaos from Washington, maybe he doesn't even mean Trump's threats to call in troops or the National Guard. I actually think he means provoked by chaos from Washington being it was provoked by the ICE enforcement. So now you're saying that the President of the United States is responsible for rioting in your city because he's carrying out lawful immigration enforcement against rapists and murderers and wife beaters and mass shooters. So just the act of ICE carrying out, as it's lawfully allowed to do, immigration activities in your sanctuary state means that he's to blame for however your citizens and non-citizens may respond to that. That's pretty unhinged. Because again, Gavin Newsom, since you've been the governor of California, and the same is true for other West Coast states as well, there have been plenty of instances of riots just like this one. Anytime the far left doesn't like something, their response is to hurt people and break things. It's happened under Donald Trump. It happened under Joe Biden. It happened under Barack Obama. Might be very convenient to blame Donald Trump for this instance, but what about the last 1,000 instances of left-wing political violence and vandalism in the state of California, in the state of Oregon, in the state of Washington? You can't blame Donald Trump for all of it, although I know you're going to try. And meanwhile, we have Democratic governors jumping on this narrative that Donald Trump is to blame for all of this. Statement from the Democratic governors on Donald Trump's use of California's National Guard. And of course, one of the governors that signed on is Governor Bob Ferguson. They would rather let their cities burn to the ground than get help from Donald Trump. They would rather blame Donald Trump for violence occurring in their states than handle it. They literally would rather officers get hurt, federal agents get killed, buildings burn to the ground, freeways be taken over, airports be taken over. They're okay with all of that as long as they can find a way to blame the other side for it, because that's what they're good at. That's what they do. And unfortunately, there's a lot of voters who listen to it. And in case you had any question that this is political, in case you had any question in the world that this is political and the response to it is political, Gavin Newsom is literally out as the largest city in the state he's supposed to be the governor for is burning, and he's fundraising off of it. Oh yes, he's sending out an email. It says to the people of Los Angeles and across the country who are protesting these immigration raids, don't give them the spectacle they want. Never use violence. Speak out peacefully and in large numbers, which is a fine message. I know many of you have been watching the news about this, so I thought it important to reach out. Thank you for reading. Yeah, but that's not why he reached out. He reached out so you'd contribute $20 to his campaign. Oh, before you go, Don't scroll past this. We're humbly asking you to support Gavin Newsom's campaign for democracy. As cars are burning in the streets, as ICE agents are under attack, as LAPD is under attack, as sheriff's deputies are under attack. He wants you to donate $20 so he can continue his campaign for democracy. Absolutely insane. And also, as if he hasn't wasted enough time and resources blaming this on Donald Trump, California now says that it is going to sue the Trump administration for calling in the National Guard.
Donald Trump has created the conditions you see on your TV tonight. He's exacerbated the conditions. He's, lit the proverbial match. He's putting fuel on this fire ever since he announced he was taking over the National Guard. An illegal act, an immoral act, an unconstitutional act, and we're going to test that theory with a lawsuit tomorrow.
It was already violent. And we'll talk about it later in our daily subscriber show poll. Did Trump calling in the National Guard inflame things further? I think we can have a conversation about that. But it was already violent. Had been violent, was violent, and it's the exact same thing we see in California time and time again. And they're acting like, oh my gosh, this is a one-off instance. Never seen this kind of left-wing political violence in California ever before. It's Donald Trump's fault because he's out here enforcing immigration laws. Insane. There's one picture I saw that sums this up. And again, I'm not trying, please do not take this as some sort of call to arms, because it is not. We are absolutely in a war for the soul of our nation. And there's one image that I think sums it up. You've got a guy, he's masked up. He's got a shirt and has a picture of Donald Trump with a target on his head and at his chest, waving a Mexican flag. Severed head of Donald Trump with cars burning in the background. These people who are out there proudly waving the Mexican flag in protest of potentially being sent back to Mexico. If you love that country so much, if you hate our president so much that you want him dead, why do you get so upset at the notion of returning? Seems like you should want to go back there willingly, right? But there's not a single picture, I think, that better sums up the state of the Democratic Party. That's who they stand for. That's who they're out there fighting for. That's who Gavin Newsom is standing up for. That's who Congresswoman Camilla Jayapal is standing up for. That's who people like Bob Ferguson stand up for and cover for and make excuses for. And that's the exact scene that's going to play out here in Seattle, too. You don't think so? We've been saying this for months. Because of all the excuses, you don't have an environment like that in states that have never tolerated political violence. There's a reason why political violence is so bad in states like Washington and California and Minnesota and New York. It's because they get away with it and they're emboldened and they don't get arrested and they don't go to jail and there aren't consequences for it. And not only are there not consequences in the judicial system, there's no consequences in the broader court of public opinion. Because you have the highest elected officials in these states who stay silent. Bob Ferguson, who's our governor right now, what did he say in 2020? What did he say when there were cop cars on fire in the streets of downtown Seattle, this time 5 years ago, when rioters were stealing police rifles out of those cop cars, when they were assaulting journalists, when they were looting businesses? What did Bob Ferguson say? What did he say when they took over 6 square blocks of the city, rendering a police precinct completely useless? What did Bob Ferguson say in 2020 when they were assaulting police officers, when they tried to cement police officers inside the precinct and light it on fire? What did Bob Ferguson say? He was Attorney General at the time, the state's chief law enforcer. What did he say? He said nothing. He said nothing. And now he's the governor. And so now those same people who perpetrated the worst act of political violence we'd seen in this state in 15 years, now they all know that he doesn't care. They all know that he supports it. They all know that he'll shut his mouth when the political violence is coming from his side of the aisle. He'll talk for years. He'll talk for 3 years straight, and he'll campaign by talking about January 6th, one of the only instances of right-wing political violence in this country in recent memory. But when it comes to political violence from his own side, he'll shut his mouth and he'll collect his votes. And that's exactly what's going to happen here in Seattle when the violence that we're seeing in California eventually makes its way here. And whether they decide to do it in the name of Gaza, or whether they decide to do it in the name of criminal illegal aliens who haven't done a damn thing for our state except hurt people, it doesn't matter to them, because they know that since they vote for Bob Ferguson, he won't say shit about it. And that's why we find ourselves in these situations time and time and time again. Sickening, really. Sickening. And you have to pick a side. You have to pick a side. I said on social media last night, there is no use trying to convince people. There is no use trying to communicate with people who would see what's happening in LA and would either call it peaceful or blame Donald Trump entirely. No use in trying to reason with them. Lost cause entirely. Lost cause. Because they choose to believe 100% what their own political side says, rather than believing what they could see with their own eyes. There's more than enough evidence to show what's happening in California. So there's a segment of this population and society that will not condemn it. They won't even acknowledge it. They'll act like it's a figment of our freaking imagination. So we can't reason with them. We can't deal with them. The only thing that we can hope to do is get more reasonable people to see what's happening, to call it out, and to ask elected leaders to do what's right and to call it out as well. It's going to be a crazy summer. It's going to be a crazy summer. More people are going to get hurt. Cops are going to get hurt. And you know what? And then we're going to be back in elections in the midterms, and they're going to put the same people back into office who supported it, who condoned it. And it's all a whole disgusting, ridiculous cycle. All right, coming up next, I was just sitting on my couch yesterday watching Rush Hour, as one does on a Sunday. It's not like I haven't seen that movie 100,000 times. Good flick, though. And I saw this commercial come on, and I had to stop and rewind and watch it back. Because I thought, no way would the state of Washington spend so much money on such a stupid ad. But of course, I'd be wrong, because they did. We'll have that coming up next. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, the very best thing that you can do is reach out to a few real estate agents. Don't just pick one at random. Make sure that it's like a job interview. Interview a couple real estate agents. Ask them, what can you do for me that other agents aren't going to be able to do for me? And I'll tell you what, Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com is going to be able to answer that question easily. He has a long track record in the state of Washington. He's been doing this for a long time. He's been through the market ups and downs. His communication is second to none. He is honest. He has integrity. He is going to, of course, the goal is make sure your home sells for as much as possible. But Wes is also going to level with you. He's going to start by giving you a free market analysis so you can set your expectations. Then he's going to go about talking about ways that you can work together to get the most possible value out of your home. That might mean doing some cosmetic upgrades. And I know some sellers don't want to hear that, because there was a time in not too long ago in the housing market in Washington state where you could put a burned down shack up and get like $2 million for it. But things are a little bit different right now, so there might have to be some cosmetic updates that you do. The nice thing is Wes can totally handle them. He can manage the contractors, take all the stress of that off your plate, and you don't even have to pay for it until closing, which I think is also a nice feature if you're worried about coming out of pocket for that stuff. So talk to a few real estate agents, but don't choose one until you've talked to our friend Wes Jones. Sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, in case you've ever doubted me, the many, many times I've said that the government does not want to solve the drug crisis. The government does not want to solve the drug crisis. There's way too much money in it. In case you've ever doubted me when I've said that, I have further proof. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. All right, so as I said, I'm sitting on my couch on a Sunday, sweating. It was so hot this weekend. My tiny little air conditioner just doing its damnedest to keep up in the corner.
Are you complaining?
I hate the heat.
Stop
I'm
it.
sweating right now. My neck is sweaty. Wow.
Great.
I know you love the heat, but I hate the heat. So I'm sitting there. I got a little air conditioner on me, and I'm watching Rush Hour, the original Rush Hour, for like the 19,000th time in my life, laughing, having a good time. And all of a sudden a commercial comes on. Now, I apologize. I rewound it and had to record it on my phone with my AC blasting in the background. But I couldn't find it online. So here's the commercial that I saw while I was minding my own business.
Most people who have lived through an opioid overdose have something in common.
They didn't do it alone. Someone was there when they OD'd. Someone had naloxone. Someone called for help. So, if you use opioids like fentanyl, know who your someone is. Use with them when you can. Have naloxone with you. And make sure your someone is ready to help you if you need it. Just like you would for them.
Wow. So I watched that, rewound it a few times, watched it again. A couple things stand out. First, fentanyl users don't all look like that. Now, do I think that there are some people who use and abuse fentanyl who look totally normal and otherwise lead normal lives? Absolutely. I think there's people who die of fentanyl overdoses who thought they were having something else and it had fentanyl in it and they died. I'm not saying all fentanyl abusers are people who are sitting out at 3rd and Pine, shooting it between their toes and folded in half. I'm not. But the way in which that normalized fentanyl abuse, that short ad from the state of Washington, the Department of Health, was crazy to me. The other thing, of course, that all of you are probably screaming that's missing is any sort of suggestion that maybe the safest way to do fentanyl is not to do it. Any sort of mention of, hey, we can offer you help. We can get you connected to substance abuse services. Because the only real safe way to do fentanyl is not to do it. No, it's all about, hey, find a friend who'll watch you inject a deadly drug into your veins. Find a friend who'll be armed with a naloxone and will watch you do it and then bring you back to life so you can do it again. All with just these friends sitting on a couch and I've got your back, buddy. No, if you were their real friend, you wouldn't let them do it in the first place. So the whole commercial was crazy for me, but I thought, okay, let me go to this little website. So at the end, it had this website for Prevent Overdose, Washington. And it's its own website. It's totally independent from the Washington Department of Health, although it's part of a campaign being run by the Washington Department of Health, yes, with your tax dollars. But I thought, let me just go there and act as if I am a fentanyl abuser who saw that commercial, who was also watching Rush Hour, just like Brandi, and saw that commercial and thought, yeah, I want to learn a little bit more about how to prevent overdoses because I'm about to shoot up fentanyl, right? So let's just say. So I thought, okay, maybe there's more to the website and it will ultimately act as a way to funnel these drug users into services. Because, right, that should be the goal of every single dollar that we spend toward the drug crisis and the fentanyl crisis. Even if it's a handout, quote unquote, harm reduction, that it should be constantly pushing them in the direction of getting help for their addiction, right? Can you put that website back up, Nicole? So Prevent Overdose Law, it has 4 key things you can click on. Where to find naloxone. So it'll give you a list of locations where you can go buy it or get it for free. Has a little part where you can learn how to use naloxone. So reversing an overdose, step-by-step instructions to help save a life. And then it has a segment, Safer Opioid Use, how to protect yourself or others who use opioids, which again, there's no such thing as safe opioid use. And then the 4th part of the website is more resources. So I thought, okay, there it is. There's something on here that's going to send people in the right direction to actually get help so they aren't using fentanyl, so they don't need to call a friend to stand by with their naloxone in case they die, right? Let's dive into this, shall we? You already know what's going to happen, but I just thought we'd do it together anyway. Let's act like we don't. So let's click on the first one. Tips for, the first 2 are obvious. Find naloxone, reduce an overdose. So those first 2 are literally just locations you can buy it. And then the other one is how to use naloxone. So we can skip over those, I think. Let's move to tips for safer opioid use. Okay. So it has a few. It has a few tips. The first one, carry naloxone. Okay, we already kind of covered that, right? That's kind of the point of the website, right? Use with others when you can. It's safer to use drugs around others and take turns when using. That way, if you or someone you're with begins to overdose, there is someone ready to give naloxone and find help. So these are your first 2 tips for safer opioid use, which again, there's really no such thing. All right, so they said if you can't use with others, if you have to use alone, here are 4 tips for you from, again, the Washington State Department of Health. Communicate. Whenever possible, tell someone you trust when you plan to use and where you'll be. Ah, yes, that's what every undercover fentanyl abuser is doing, is they're calling their friend and saying, hey, at home right now, just about to shoot up fentanyl. Just thought I'd let you know. If you don't hear from me in 5 minutes, I'm probably dead. Don't think that's happening a lot. Stay accessible. Use somewhere you feel safe that also allows others to get to you or find you if you need help. Leave the door unlocked if possible and have naloxone nearby in case others don't have it on hand. Got it. A lot of steps there. Similar to when the Department of Social and Health Services or the Department of Children, Youth, and Families said, hey, if you're a drug-abusing parent, we'll give you a free lockbox so you can lock up your fentanyl syringes, as if anyone would ever think to do that. If you're dumb enough to use fentanyl around kids, you're probably not smart enough to lock it up before, during, and after. Here's the third tip. Again, taxpayer-funded tip from the Department of Health. The same people who made you wear masks for like 3 years while you were outside. Go low and slow. When using any drug, start with a small dose and wait to see how you feel before taking more. If you have taken a break from using fentanyl or other opioids and began using again, this could be especially important as your tolerance would have gone down. That is a tip from the Department of Health to go low and slow. Again, we're quite a ways into this website. And really, no effort to try to say, don't go at all. Don't do it at all. Here's the fourth safety tip for if you have to use alone. Try the Never Use Alone hotline. Ah, yes. There is a hotline you can call where a stigma-free volunteer will answer 24 hours a day, and they will stay on the line with you while you use to make sure you're okay. These are the safety tips that the Department of Health offers on its taxpayer-funded website that you're going to be met with if you watch the commercial like I did and you thought, let me learn more about that. Okay, so now we've gone through 3 of the 4 sections on this website. How to find naloxone, how to use naloxone, and the safety tips. Now, the 4th one gives me the most hope because the 4th chapter in this website is resources. I was like, okay, resources to get off drugs, right? right? Resources to get off drugs, obviously, because, that's the safest way to do it. Let's check out the resources, shall we? First batch of resources, harm reduction. Harm reduction strategies, tips to prevent or respond to opioid overdoses. Opie Rescue, free overdose support tool that complements naloxone use. Substance use and pregnancy resources, guidance for individuals and families who may need help. Local services, Washington State Naloxone Finder. Syringe service program delivery. Oh, yeah. Find a syringe service program. And then it has talk support. Here it is, guys. The one thing on this website, on the entire website, that actually sends you to a place where you can talk to someone if you want treatment for your opioid abuse. They have the Never Use Alone hotline again, of course, if you want to call someone who has to sit there on the phone while you inject a deadly drug into your body to see if it kills you. They have the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and then they have the Washington Recovery Helpline. So like the 4th section into this website, at the very, very bottom, they have a helpline for substance use treatment services. The only thing on that entire website that suggests maybe you should get treatment for your opioid addiction. And that's the rabbit hole I went down after seeing that stupid commercial from the Department of Health paid for with your tax money. So never again doubt me when I tell you that they do not want to get people off drugs. It's one of the biggest money makers that they have. The homeless industrial complex and the drug industrial complex. They want people to stay in addiction. They don't care if you overdose as long as you can be brought back to life and overdose again. So they can continue to push out hundreds of millions of dollars in government contracts to their cronies and allies who they don't want you to get better either, because then the gravy train stops coming in. Then the money stops coming in. And I get it. The Department of Health has probably had some other initiatives focused on getting people into treatment. But to be running, I reached out this morning to inquire about what the cost was to run ads during the movie Rush Hour. But I'm sure they're running ads elsewhere. How much money do you think they spent on this? Millions? Definitely millions. To build an independent website, to run TV commercials, telling people, hey, don't worry if you're addicted to fentanyl. Totally, that's awesome. Love it. Good for you. Just make sure maybe you tell someone, you have a friend nearby, you arm them with naloxone, and then have them watch you inject that deadly drug into your body. And if you don't have any friends, that's okay. We have a hotline. Call our hotline, and we'll have somebody sit there as you inject the drug. And then if you don't respond in a couple of minutes, then maybe we'll call police, but police are scary, so maybe we'll just let you die. What do you want me to do with this? All because I saw a commercial yesterday.
It's pretty wild too, because that last graphic, so where the recovery line is under talk support, which to me that's like they're just gonna talk you into doing it for longer in
You think these people are going to say, hey, maybe you don't need substance use treatment.
It's not
it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone.
Right.
You should just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it. You really think that they're going to give you the support you need? And look, I get it that just telling someone don't do fentanyl doesn't really work, I know that's been tried quite a bit. But this whole idea that we have all these resources, for instance, with naloxone, you have police officers who go out there, and I've watched them do it. I've done reporting with police who go out and are actively trying to bring someone back to life. And there's nothing on the back end. The people get up, they walk away. No requirement they go to the hospital. No requirement they have some sort of civil commitment, although the standard is supposed to be you're a threat to yourself or others. Yeah, pretty sure you're a threat to yourself if you're injecting a deadly drug into your body and you almost died and police had to bring you back to life. No mandatory connection to services. So we really just are bringing them back to life so they can go and try to kill themselves again. And your tax money is supporting that approach, the quote unquote harm reduction approach, which is anything but. Wild stuff. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. They also have this new legislative scorecard feature that you can use, where you can take a look at how your state lawmakers voted on various bills of interest, in case that's something you're interested in tracking. All right, coming up next, we've got some alphabet mob stories to talk about. That's what I'm now going to refer to. LGBTQ 2IA plus XYZ. LGB, totally fine. The rest of it, alphabet mob. We'll have a back-to-back segment of Unbelievable. First, our friend Zach Abraham at Bulwark Capital is the guy to go to if you're worried about your retirement portfolio, even if you just think you need a second opinion. The stocks have been all over the place, and if your retirement portfolio is having these wild swings in response to it, there is a very good chance that you are simply not properly protected against risk and against situations like this. For instance, with the tariffs and the uncertainty that comes along with that. So if not for anything else, give Zach a call or go to knowyourriskpodcast.com, knowyourriskpodcast.com, and schedule time for their free portfolio review. And Zach's going to do that. He's going to go over your retirement portfolio. He's going to give you his honest opinion about it. He says sometimes he looks at it and actually people are pretty well allocated, and he tells them to just sort of keep doing what they're doing. But sometimes he might look at it and be like, ugh, who did this? And then they say, I did. And he said, well, you shouldn't be doing that. An expert should be doing that. But anyway, he's going to give you a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible. You only get one retirement. Don't screw it up. Get a second opinion. Schedule your free Know Your Risk portfolio review right now at knowyourriskpodcast.com. That's knowyourriskpodcast.com. And with that, as we continue our celebration of Pride Month, let's get to our segment, Unbelievable. Dun, 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 dun. Ba-da, dun, 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 dun. Da, 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 da. All right, over the weekend, the City of White Center, which is just south of Seattle, had their Pride Street Festival. And in keeping with the annual Pride tradition, They said cops aren't allowed because nothing screams inclusion like banning people based on their profession. And that was what happened in the city of Seattle, where they basically said, we don't want any cops there. And cops who are gay are like, can I not come then? Like, can I not even come just for fun on my own with my friends? So this had to do with uniformed police officers because they basically feel like they're a threat. And because of Stonewall all those years ago, no police officer can be trusted, not even in one of the most progressive places on earth where police literally we have literally in the city of Seattle, like police cars that have the pride colors on them during Pride Month. Yep, can't even trust those cops, so no cops allowed. So this is what Celebrate White Center Pride said on social media ahead of the event. We'll get right to the point. We heard you, and there will be no cops at White Center Pride. Our mission is to create spaces that are safe, joyful, and affirming for our entire LGBTQ plus community, especially for those who have historically been marginalized, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, trans, disabled, and youth voices. Youth are marginalized? It's news to me. We've heard the concerns from you and many others in our community about the police presence at the festival. In response, we want to confirm the following. There will be no uniformed police presence inside our event space. There will be no police department adjacent booths at our event, including the community service officers who we have allowed in the past. They have voluntarily rescinded their vending application. We are working with a trained community-based safety team composed of LGBTQ plus and allied volunteers with experience in de-escalation, accessibility, and support. Ah, yes. So at a major event, a major gathering, which of course always presents some sort of security concerns, and look, I thought that the LGBTQ plus IA questioning community was very concerned about their safety right now under Donald Trump. I thought they're under attack. I thought their very lives are in jeopardy. So wouldn't you be concerned if a bunch of you are gathering in one place? I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster in this Trump era, right? No, we don't want any cops here, but in their place, we will have LGBTQ community members who are trained in de-escalation. Ah, yes. How are you going to de-escalate a gun? How are you going to de-escalate someone driving a vehicle through your gathering? Which isn't a concern just at Pride events. Every parade, any sort of large gathering of people, concert could be a potential target for somebody who wants to do harm. Are your LGBTQ community volunteers going to help with that? And I said over the weekend, it might have been harsh. Anybody calls 911 from inside that event, police say, nah, you got this. And they hang up the phone. Because of course, who are they going to call if there's an actual emergency? Who are they going to call if there's an actual public safety crisis happening inside? Hell, who are they going to call if someone overdoses on drugs? They're going to call 911. They're going to call the police, and they're going to expect the police to respond. And if the police do not respond in a timely fashion, then they're going to what? They're going to complain about it on social media. And they're going to say, police didn't respond to our event because they don't like gay people, even though they were banned from the event. So it's just typical, absolute, utter nonsense. All right, so that's nonsense. But there was a Pride-related story so stupid that happened in the city of Linwood that not even King 5 News would cover for the alphabet mob. Let's talk about it in a double dose of unbelievable. You know when King 5 News won't even spin a Pride story? That it's bad. And this one's pretty bad. So the headline from King 5 News, Linwood Pride accuses a city of discrimination after Pride flag removal. Terrible headline. Because they went on to say, the local LGBTQ plus nonprofit tried to put up an unauthorized Pride flag at Wilcox Park, which the city says is against city policy. So here's what really happened here. This Pride group, without asking anyone, without getting permission from anyone, at a public park, just put their flag up. And the city says, hey, you can't do that without asking permission. So they took it down. They put it up with the American flag and the POW flag. And the city's like, hey, you can't do that. So the Parks and Recreation director had it taken down. It wasn't about the fact that it was a Pride flag. It was about the fact that this rando group of people just decided they wanted to fly their flag at a city park and didn't ask anyone for permission. But of course, they think it was about hating gay people. And now they're calling for the parks director to resign. I really hope he doesn't resign. I know the city of Linwood is a little bit crazy, but I really hope this is an instance where they can say, hey, that's pretty stupid. All you had to do is come to us and say, hey, we want to fly the pride flag. Is that okay? Would you be all right with that if only for a weekend or for a celebration? But no, they literally think that they should be able to put their flag up on the spot, any place, anytime, without asking anyone's permission. And that's just cool. Can you imagine if someone went there and tried to put up a MAGA flag? Trump flag? Oh my gosh, they would be like, oh, they went there and they put up a Trump flag without the city's permission and without a permit. It would just be insane. And to the Seattle Times credit, they did explain in this story that these people didn't ask permission.
You mean King 5?
What did I say?
Seattle Times.
Oh, they're just both so bad. I just confused them.
But no
all the
credit
time.
to them.
Yeah, it said a city spokesperson wrote in part, we want to be clear that the city's response was not because this was a pride event. It was an issue of following the guidelines and requirements the organization agreed to and then didn't adhere to. So there it is. There it is. Even so stupid, even King 5 couldn't make an excuse for them. All right, we already did national news, so I want to talk a little bit about the two incredible interviews we had on Sundays with subscribers yesterday, speaking of the alphabet mob. But first, I've told you guys about my success on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program. I'm now about 2.5 years into this weight loss journey, trying to get back to my, as close as I can to my TV weight. I'll never be in my 20s again after all, but I'm down 45 pounds, you guys. Oh my God, I have never felt so good. There's nothing quite like, especially for women, will attest to this, going into your closet and everything you try on you love. Because when I'm not feeling good about myself, when my weight goes up, I will tear apart my closet. I'll try on 30 things, then I'll just be in a puddle of tears telling my husband I don't want to go anywhere because nothing looks good on me. But now, everything I pull out, I'm like, yeah, this looks great. And I leave the house feeling confident and wonderful. Look, the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program isn't a magic trick. It's not a drug or an injection. It is trying to get you to focus on eating the right foods in the right portions, really committing to the program for 60 days to reset your metabolism. And so if that's something that you think that you might be able to do or that you're interested in, reach out to our friend Dr. Coogan at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Schedule a free 15-minute consultation. He'll go over what the program entails, and then you can decide whether it's something that you think will work for you. eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Why every time I do an Eastside ad, you sit over there and you grin? Why?
Sometimes you say funny things.
Every time. I'm doing my Eastside ad and you're over there like, okay. What did I do?
Nothing.
Okay. All right. I just am happy with my weight loss. That's all.
Great.
All right. We had a fantastic episode of Sundays with Subscribers yesterday. I tweeted out and said the alphabet mob is going to be pissed at this one. And they were. They were like, don't you have anything better to do on a sunny weekend than hate on people? And then I tweeted out a picture of me at the river with my dog. And I said, actually, I can do both at the same time. Thank you. So we've talked a lot about, and I've shared my concerns that, first of all, I don't care what you do with your life. I don't want to come across as anti-LGBTQ whatever. If you're an adult and you're living your life and you just want to be left alone, I don't have any problem with that. I would prefer you want to be left alone. I would prefer to leave you alone, really. But the issue is when you're trying to force it down everyone's throats, you're trying to make it, coexist with government and schools and force radical gender ideology on kids and let boys compete against girls and let doctors perform irreversible medical procedures on children and cut off healthy breasts and genitals. That's where you lose me. And when you call everyone a bigot who doesn't agree with every single facet of your ideology, that's where you lose me as well. That's where I'm going to start to push back. So we had two fantastic guests who are feeling the same way. One of them is a lesbian and one of them is a Democrat on Bainbridge Island of all places, which is the bluest of blue islands of all the snooty Democrats on Bainbridge Island. So this is great because, I don't think that these things will change in our state if it's just conservatives and talking heads or Republicans pushing back against it. I think it has to be people within these communities. That's one of the reasons that the interviews we do with detransitioners, I think, are so significant because, these are people who went down that rabbit hole, came out the other side and said, oh my God, I was lied to. This was the wrong thing to do. We shouldn't medicalize children. So Justine Detterling, she has a Substack called Homoarchy, and she says she is on a cultural warpath because she's an OG lesbian. She was there fighting for gay rights, gay marriage, all of those things. And she feels like that movement is totally being derailed by this alphabet mob that is trying to co-opt everything they fought for.
I did not get this angry overnight. It took me years to get as angry as I am, watching the damage mount and mount and mount to young people's bodies, to our rights movement, to free speech, to cognitive liberty, to parental rights, all of it. These organizations have become, in my opinion, more destructive to us than anything that I've seen right-wing Republicans try to do or pass since I came out.
Wow.
Probably 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. So what we need to do is recognize these organizations are not salvageable. I would include the Seattle Pride organization in that if we want to talk locally, but also the national organizations like the HRC and GLAAD. GLAAD is a completely corrupt, I would call actually evil organization. And we have to build parallel organizations and institutions because these organizations are not redeemable. And there just is a general thing happening on the social justice left that is broken with that mindset. There are reasons for that are whole podcast subjects in of themselves, but they cannot compromise. They cannot admit they're doing harm. They cannot admit what they push actually isn't evidence-based, whether it's a DEI program or medicalizing a young person's body. It's fundamentally broken.
God, she was good. And she was on a warpath. And look, she's the kind of person who they'll call a bigot. She's a lesbian. They'll call her a bigot. She's in a same-sex relationship. Doesn't matter. If you don't accept the entire alphabet mob, you're against us. And the things she's pointing out are reasonable. And frankly, I hear it from other gay people as well, who are frustrated. And in particular, it's the people who, had to exist in this world before gay marriage. And it's like this younger generation where really they've always been accepted. And they've always been quite visible. They've always lived in a state where they had the right to marry someone. They're the ones who act like they are the most oppressed. And you have these other people who are like, man, you guys don't know how bad it was for so long. And now you're ruining our movement by adding all these letters onto it and by pushing for unhinged things like, changing a child's gender and letting boys compete against girls. So I thought Justine was so great. We also had Brian Anderson on the show. He is, again, a Democrat, lives on Bainbridge Island. He's part of something called Democrats for an Informed Approach to Gender. And he says his interest, he's really about trying to get his fellow Democrats to just use reason on these things. And he's like, look, I spent a big chunk of my life fighting for women's rights.
All of my life, I've been a supporter of women's rights and watching it evolve through the 60s and the 70s and women getting more and more rights in our society, Title IX being a big step moving forward. And then to see us come to a point where we're now saying that it's okay for males to move into female-only spaces, to compete in women's sports, to be put in cells in women's prisons, and go to the Korean spa. And I just think it's wrong. And not only do I think the Democrats or the progressive wing of the Democrats are wrong on the merits of these issues, but I think it's hurting us electorally. If you look at the polls, it's just an 80-20 issue. The Democrats are on the wrong side of it. If I felt like they were on the right side, I would say, okay, you go, that's the right side. But I don't think they're on the right side. And most of these issues, even amongst Democrats, they're polling like 2 out of 3 Democrats oppose males competing in women's sports. So I don't understand why this has become, well, I do understand why it's become such an issue. It's through cancel culture and shaming people and, getting people fired if they speak out on this issue. So, Yeah, that's why I got involved. It just felt really unfair to me.
Because it is unfair. Love that guy. And, one of the things that is really hard to wrap your mind around, and I would challenge you guys to name a name, as Brian and I discussed, I don't know one elected Democrat in Washington state who's come out against men competing against women, against men in women's prisons, or against gender mutilation on kids. Can you think of one? At a city level, at a county level, at the state level, literally one. If you can think of a name, tell me and send me what they've said about being opposed to it. But this is an 80-20 issue. Yet 100% of elected Democrats won't speak out about it. Do you really think it's because 100% of them support it? No, it's because a big chunk of them are absolute cowards and they're scared of the alphabet mob and they're scared of being labeled. So I'm so glad there's people like Brian and Justine who are willing to come out, and they get attacked for it viciously, in online forums. And poor Brian, he probably won't be able to walk around Bainbridge Island after this. But he cares about it. He's like, look, I fought for women's rights, and now look what's happening to women. This is ridiculous. I love having had so many cowardly men like Bob Ferguson and Chris Ragtall and Nick Brown not stick up for women and say, yeah, men can take over women's spaces, to see a grown man who's like, no, we can't. Okay, that's a little weird. I just love. So if you want to catch Sundays with Subscribers, remember we're running that 30% off promo right now. Sundays with Subscribers is, as the name suggests, exclusive for subscribers. You do have to be a paid subscriber. The good news is it's only $5 a month. And right now, for the next 4 days, we have a 30% off promo. So if you go to patreon.com/undivided, type in the promo 300, that's the number 300, you're going to get a sweet deal on supporting Undivided. We're about 80 short of our goal so far, Nicole. 80 short.
Oh, wow. That's close, though.
That's pretty close. So we had a goal of adding 300 new paid subscribers over a month, because we rarely do like pushes for new paid subscribers. And we've gotten quite a few, but we're about 80 short. Can we reach 80 in 4 days?
Remember, you can gift it to your friends.
Yeah, you could gift it to a friend.
Family members.
Just have them drop a little common sense in their inbox every now and then. So it's a good time to subscribe, though. We've got some great episodes of Sundays with Subscribers that have rolled out. All right, coming up next, I asked you guys in our daily subscriber show poll whether you think Trump is in part to blame for inflaming tensions in LA. I know my answer to that, but I'm open to hearing dissenting opinions, of course. First, if you haven't already, take the First Mark Challenge. It is simple. You go to firstmarkinsurance.com, give them a ring, set up time to take the First Mark Challenge, and you could be saving thousands of dollars a year on your insurance. And you could have a company that's been doing it for a long time completely take over all the stress and confusion related to figuring out what insurance you need, insurance claims, how do I handle this? They'll do it all for you. I think that's the best part of First Mark, besides the fact that it doesn't cost you anything. Our friend Brock Heward, former UW quarterback and sports radio host, said having First Mark on his side has been essential.
Yeah, you are technically their customer, but you will find this out when you make that call. They're your teammate right alongside with you, only wanting the best for you and rooting for the best for you and taking away all the stress and confusion that comes with this crazy insurance world.
Yeah, so take the First Mark Challenge today. Don't wait. Every month you wait is just money. You're just flushing money down the toilet that you don't have to. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. Okay, in our daily subscriber show poll on Patreon, Locals, and X, I'm open to disagreement. I asked you guys whether mobilizing the National Guard escalated the violence in LA over the weekend. Do you believe yes, absolutely it did? Somewhat, or no, Brandi, that's absurd. Nicole, you're always first. I like your hair today, by the way, the crimpy,
thank
crimpy
you.
style.
It's my beach wave.
I was at my coffee stand, and a woman who's always there, I won't call her out, she had crimpy hair, and I was like, wow, how long did that take you? She said, that's my natural. Her hair crimps when it dries. I was like, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. Anyway.
It's a little the 90s coming back, I guess. Early 90s, maybe 80s, I guess.
I digress. What answer do you go with?
I would go with somewhat, because I'm sure that people seeing that happening ended up bringing or hearing that happening from Trump, because every time he speaks, they like mobilize even more.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that did escalate it somewhat. I think it was already escalating.
Yeah.
So I'm sure maybe that made it quicker. Maybe it made it more. Maybe it made it different. I don't know. But there was some impact, I'm sure, but it needed to happen. As far we've got to tell these people, no, this is not okay. And I appreciate the police chief who came out and said, hey, we have a system, we're doing this and this. And like you said, they weren't present in some of the spaces that were getting burned, but like the police have been kind of disarmed with the sanctuary city thing. And so I think that this was necessary to come in and say, hey, these are our operations nationally, and we're going to put a stop to it right now. This is not okay.
Well, you're punishing the victim. You're like, oh, Trump can't say anything about people assaulting federal agents in our city or do anything about it, because if he does anything about it, then they'll get even more violent. It's like, okay, that's give a mouse a cookie. There's a reason we always talk about that book.
Right.
It's not Donald Trump's fault. So
these are federal things happening that they're protesting. So
right.
It honestly shouldn't fall on LAPD to deal with this. It should be a national thing. Like, send in the troops, because this is ridiculous and we have to stop it much quicker than it's being stopped even now.
Yeah, and the Marines I felt a little bit differently about. The National Guard is different than the military, and there's a reason you're not supposed to use the military against your own civilians,
sure.
right? And there's some safeguards in place, and we can totally have a conversation about what is the proper protocol, how do you have this happening? But it wasn't like Gavin Newsom called Trump and said, hey, I get it, your agents are under attack. You have every right to protect your federal agents and property. How can we do this in a way that doesn't inflame tensions, right? Instead, what did they do? Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, they went all over TV. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris put out a statement. Donald Trump is inflaming tensions. So I almost think it was their response to Donald Trump doing what needed to be done that inflamed tensions. They encouraged, basically, people to be upset about the federal government trying to protect its agents and its buildings. Sherry had an... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Sherry had an answer that I tend to agree with Sherry's answer on Patreon. She said, I believe it escalated because the LA mayor and governor had a hissy fit about it. If the mayor and governor had supported this instead of telling the police to stand down, things would have been different. Right. So they could have, like adults, and I get it, Donald Trump sometimes, he's not picking up the phone to Gavin Newsom. He's tweeting it out or he's putting it on Truth Social. So I'm not saying he's perfect in it. In a perfect world, they wouldn't allow the escalation to begin with. And if the escalation happened regardless, then they would call each other and say, hey, we have to protect these agents. We have to protect our buildings. So we're going to call in the National Guard. We'll dot the I's, cross the T's, but we need you to work with us to protect life and property. But nobody's an adult anymore.
Now, this is what Ferguson signed a bill saying couldn't happen in our state, right?
Yep.
So this weekend, when what are they calling it? The No Kings Day on Saturday. And this weekend, when this happens here, it will be interesting to see how it's handled, because I get it. Like, they're not allowed, but I don't know. It's going to be a battle.
Well,
here.
and also, why would you rule that out? And you can allow them, but they're saying basically you have to take extra steps. But for instance, when they called in the National Guard finally in the summer of 2020, they said they couldn't be armed. So you basically had these National Guard soldiers out there, unarmed, and just like ripe for the picking. And how stupid is that? So this symbolic, just idiotic. These people are. And do you think, by the way, before I read some of your responses and reveal the poll results, do you think, by the way, that they would ever lose their mind if there was a right-wing mob that was burning cop cars, burning civilian cars, burning ride shares, torching buildings, assaulting officers? If the president had said, we're going to call in the National Guard and we'll put down that right-wing mob, you think that Gavin Newsom would be like, don't do that. Don't do that. No, if it was a right-wing mob, first of all, the National Guard wouldn't even be necessary, because they would have brought in the full force of every law enforcement agency in the state and the state patrol, and they would have had that right-wing mob rounded up, arrested, facing serious criminal charges. So they just treat it completely differently. You know that. I know that. Nicole knows that. Sort of beating a dead horse. So most of you are saying, no, Brandi, that's absurd. 68%, 30% saying somewhat, and there is a good 2 to 3% right now saying, yeah, Donald Trump absolutely inflamed things. Let's read some comments.
I mean, I can see where that opinion comes from, because I definitely, like I said, I think it did escalate. However, I think it was going that direction anyway.
It was already violent.
Which way it was, yes.
Yeah, so let's not act as if it was a peaceful demonstration.
It didn't create the violence.
That did not create the violence. Let me see. E says, I lived through WTO and the LA riots, and my family members lived through Watts and other in LA. The guards were not called during these riots. Had they been, then we wouldn't be going through this now. Today's leadership needs to be arrested and charged as well. It won't end until there are real consequences for the lack of leadership. Notice this is not happening in New York under Adams' leadership. There have been times, though, before Eric Adams got his sanity around him, where this was definitely allowed. And I agree with you. Like, look, I don't think the federal government can get in the practice of coming in and overreaching in the states. I totally understand the concerns. I am a states' rights person. But when the federal, like I said, these are federal entities, federal agents, federal buildings. If the state isn't going to protect those things, the federal government has a right to protect those things. And at some point, these are Americans in this, in Washington, in California. If they're under attack and you have a violent mob burning things down and the state isn't doing enough to protect people, what do you do? So it's just it's insane that politics literally comes before lives. Politics for the Democrats first, 100%.
Trump did call for Newsom, saying he would support Newsom getting arrested. And now Newsom's losing it on X and everywhere else.
And he's going to fundraise off that for sure. And look, don't arrest Gavin Newsom, because arresting Gavin Newsom will give Gavin Newsom exactly what he wants. And oh my God, then he'll run in 2028. It's just ridiculous. Kayla, there are consequences for actions. And if Newsom isn't going to show that, then the president must, in an effort to show federal officers someone has their back. And again, they're out there doing lawful enforcement. If you don't like the fact that you can't come into this country illegally, then petition to change federal law. That law's on the books. You can't come here illegally. You'll be deported if someone chooses to enforce the law, which Donald Trump is choosing to enforce the law. And again, any of those Mexican citizens or an American citizen who did any of this abroad, you really think they'd be like, no, you can stay here. It's totally fine. No, it's like only in America where we're expected just to take the peoples of the world without any sort of
the ones that are trying to destroy us.
Just insane. Joanna, I chose somewhat because the rioters are using it as an excuse, but it is, of course, absurd. Yeah, I think you can believe it's absurd, but still feel like, these unhinged people probably got even more violent when they heard the lies coming from Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass. Let me see. Brandon Ferris says, absolutely not. The lawlessness was already there, and it was. And anybody who tells you it wasn't is an absolute liar. Michael Barham on Locals. I can see the same scenario playing out in Seattle. Perhaps Antifa will get a comeuppance. Yeah, I'd love to see Antifa get its comeuppance, but I want that in the form of federal prison, not in some sort of vigilante justice. Todd Welch, the announcement brought more news, especially national, and that allows the rioters to ramp up their violence. The violence is purely on elected Democrats, Karen Bass, and Governor Newsom's feet. I agree. All right.
Really quick, Chris on Facebook says the left is violent. They need someone else to blame for their violence. I believe they de-escalated it. It would have been worse. My 2 cents.
Oh, I think there is some of that, right? If people hear, hey, he's bringing in the National Guard and maybe even the Marines, people who might have been on the fence about staying or going, because there's always those people on the peripheral of the riots who are kind of engaged, but not really. And I mean, once you declare a state of emergency, for instance, or once you declare a dispersal order, the act of being there is then unlawful. You see that happen in Seattle. So that's a way to separate peaceful demonstrators from people who aren't peaceful and are there to break the law. So it's actually a really effective tool. So if you stay in one of those zones when there's chaos and unrest, sorry, you're not a peaceful demonstrator anymore. Right. You're just not. Let's see. Okay, great. Grid comments. Oh, wait, those daily. Sorry, I'm all turned around. Okay, let's get to some comments on the show today before we get to our closing sanity check. Elise, good morning, Brandi and Nicole. Your Sundays with Subscribers was a great interview, and I like what I'm seeing in the LGB movement. I believe your podcast and others like yours are helping very much. Thank you. That's nice. We like to feel like we're helping. H, I'm afraid that the riots will start here soon. I don't know what I would do if I was stuck in traffic and people started breaking my windows. Yeah, I got to start to carry my gun for sure, because, I mean, that's always just oh, we're just being peaceful. We're surrounding a vehicle and not letting it go anywhere. I've been surrounded by mobs, and you definitely feel like your life's in danger when that happens. And you would have every right to take action to protect your life. And so that's a scary situation, being surrounded. Culper, Rick Steves is holding a protest in downtown Edmonds. The travel guy, he's got a cult following.
It's one of the No King's Day or whatever, and his picture's being used for it. I don't know if he's throwing it or I don't know.
Or he's just going to be there. He's been at previous left-wing demonstrations.
Interesting to spend your you built that name on travel and you want to switch it to extreme activist.
I mean, the people who I think like him the most are probably on the left. I was at that Cascade PBS event, and he had a what do you call it when he groupies?
Groupies.
Oh,
yeah.
he totally had groupies. I was like, wow. I know it won't surprise you that I had no groupies at the Cascade PBS
Just said
event.
that one. You have groupies other places.
No groupies. Mark, indoctrinated progressive liberals are the problem in all the blue states. I have to agree. I hate to make it red versus blue, but Greg, I was ready to bring my marshmallows and chocolate if it was a peaceful protest. Shake my head. Yeah. Oh, we'll get to that in our closing sanity check. You're sort of foreshadowing there. Troy Carr, for criminals, enforcement is always discrimination. Yeah. On our Sundays with Subscribers episode, Upper Sky DJ, I totally agree with her, Justine. We fought too hard for the progress we got, i.e. not to lose our homes or jobs, etc. I'm just so frustrated with all this stuff, 50 years of just being myself. And I think for a lot of the OG gays, they really do just want to live their life. They just want to be left alone. And that was the goal all along, is we want to be treated like everyone else. We want to be left alone. And now it's like, no. We want special treatment. We don't want to be treated like everyone else. We want special treatment, and we want everyone to cater and bow down to us because of our sexuality. And it's just weird. Rob Shrivers, harm reduction without other measures is just an admission of failure. Yeah, it's just assisted suicide is what it is. Old Sub Sailor, $10 super chat. Wow, I can't remember when we were lucky enough to get... I can remember when we were lucky enough to get 150 watching on YouTube, 676 today. I'm so proud to see how the show has grown. Great job, Team Undivided. Yeah, we appreciate it. And that's, not even on X. I think we have a much larger audience on X daily. But YouTube is definitely a good barometer for how much the show has grown. We had a goal of reaching 50,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the year, and we're at like 85,000. And it's not even halfway through the year, so
Thanks,
it's going
guys.
great. Yeah, thank you, guys. Northwest Aviator, $4.99 super chat. I'm not a citizen of Washington. I'm a citizen of the U.S., so when the state fails, I expect the feds to step in. And that's the thing. We pay federal taxes. So if we're here and our elected leaders aren't protecting us from a violent mob, I want the feds to come in. Use reasonable force. I'm not sure about the active duty Marines. That's kind of contrary to how our nation is supposed to be set up. But that's what the National Guard is for. They're there to step in during times of crisis. Let them do so. And by the way, I would note, the National Guard isn't some evil Trump mob entity. These are citizen soldiers. These are like citizens in our communities who step up during times of crisis to help with food banks, to help with COVID, to help with wildfires. You're acting like it's Trump's Nazi Gestapo.
Right.
No, these are like probably just your neighbors and, people who
been doing this long before Trump was in
right,
office.
For a variety of things.
Yeah.
So shame on you guys for making them get off their couch when they're already working a day job and coming out to deal with all you lunatics. All right, Nicole, thank you. And with that, speaking of lunatics, let's get to our closing sanity check. I think every period of unrest is marked by something dumb the media said. So I guess, summer of 2020, Summer of Love was Jenny Durkin on CNN. But then, of course, there's that infamous CNN video with the guy in Minneapolis after the George Floyd riots, and behind him is a wall of fire. And the chyron on CNN says mostly peaceful. So then it became the mostly peaceful, buildings burning down. I think this from a journalist at ABC7 in LA is going to go down as that moment for the 2025 riots.
Large group of people. It could turn very volatile if you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation and altercation between officers and demonstrators.
It's just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn. There it is. We have probably the dumbest so far, but probably will not be top dumbest thing said by the media over the riots in LA. That has been your closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. A reminder, if you want to support our show and help us reach our goal, we only have 4 days to get there, of adding 300 paid subscribers over 30 days. You can do so with a sweet discount. Go to patreon.com/undivided. That's patreon.com/undivided. Use the promo code 300 and you'll get 30% off your first year of Undivided, which I think is a pretty sweet deal for supporting our independent journalism and our effort to wake people up in Washington State and beyond. It comes to like less than $5 a month with a discount. Like $3.50 a month. Sweet. Okay. Normal week of shows this week. Right, Nicole? Not taking a single day off.
Not a single
after a few
day.
weird weeks of travel. So we'll see you back here, same time, tomorrow.